No, this time it's called wish fulfilled. I pretended not to understand and asked, what wish? Anyway, I won't tease you anymore in the future. I will also cherish you, take care of you, and love Lena. Is this deal economically viable now? With a faint smile on the corner of my mouth and my eyebrows curved like a crescent moon, I said, deal. One day, Julian's Yvonne. His brother got drunk at the dinner table and pointed at my nose and said to me, you're so stupid. Do you think your husband likes you? His first love got married to someone else. He gave up and then got the marriage certificate with you. Understand? I went on a blind date with Sean. I fell in love with him at first sight. I gave him the note little son because when he smiles, he is like my son. How can I describe Sean? He is like another me in the world. He knows what I like to eat and what movies I love to watch. We have the same daily routine. We brush our teeth in front of the mirror in the morning. While brushing his teeth, he strokes my head. When I cook, he does the dishes for me. Even when we sleep at night, he is extremely familiar with my posture and holds me firmly in his arms. He will excitedly give me a large paper bag after work and tell me that he got the cream puffs that just opened downstairs and are extremely popular. Yvonne, you will definitely like it. When Sean smiles, there are 2 dimples at the corners of his mouth. He always knows my preferences. All the links he shares with me are of my interest. One day he said that he saw a diamond ring on his way home from work that was very suitable for me. I asked him what it was like. He said wait a minute, and then took out a small box from his pocket. He said, will you marry me? I want to call you my wife. I still remember the day Sean and I got our marriage certificate. The weather was actually not very good. We both wore white shirts and took that wedding photo for 50 yuan. Actually, on that day when we left the Civil Affairs Bureau, I remember it very clearly. He stared at the red certificate for a long time. I asked him what was wrong. Was he regretting it? He suddenly picked me up. We are 2 adults. At the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, I was a bit embarrassed and asked him to put me down. Then he rested his chin on my neck and said to me, happy wedding, my baby wife. The newlyweds are so sweet. My colleague propped her chin and teased me. Because Sean often comes to pick me up at my company these days, we have become familiar with each other after some time. I blushed and hurriedly stuffed my notebook into my bag and made a gesture of zipping up my mouth. Amid the banter of my colleagues saying, oh, you're still shy, I ran towards Sean. Slow down. He patted my head, took my hand and walked, asking me why I still voluntarily work overtime even though I work in a company with a 6-hour workday. I quietly complained to him about my unreliable boss. When we reached a funny point, we both laughed. It seems that being by Sean's side is very happy. With curved eyebrows, he tucked my messy hair behind my ear. The previous game controller at home was broken. After dinner, I picked up the newly bought controller and put my hands on my hips and invited him to play games together. After playing 2 rounds, he didn't give in at all. His character almost beat mine. I was very angry and kicked him with my foot. He then took the opportunity to hold my ankle and pull me towards him. He pressed me down on the sofa. Playing games is boring. How about playing something else? That day, he called me and said, wife, there's a new ice cream shop downstairs. I brought you strawberry and sea salt flavor. Let's go eat the northeastern cuisine that we didn't manage to book last time. In the evening, we can also watch that anime movie we've always wanted to see. I said okay. Are you on your way home from work? I'll wait for you at home. As a result, on that day, I waited for him for a very long time. It was only when the whole room was completely dark that he came back. Of course, there was no northeastern cuisine, no anime movie. There was strawberry and sea salt ice cream in the box in his hand, but it had all melted. He was in a daze. I supported him and then smelled the alcohol on him. Why did you go drinking? He pushed me away and rushed into the toilet. That was probably the first time he locked himself in a space that isolated me. His phone on the shoe cabinet kept ringing and ringing. A strange number called over and over again. I hesitated for a long time. Finally, I suddenly picked up the phone and pressed the answer button. Instantly, intermittent crying came from the receiver. Sean, I regret it. Can you come back to me again? I hurriedly hung up the phone. It was a woman who called. A woman I didn't know. He locked himself in the toilet for nearly 2 hours. Finally, I stood in front of the toilet door and knocked. I'll go to sleep first, Sean. Don't stay inside for too long. Don't make me worry about you. He didn't respond to me. Actually, saying I'll sleep, how could I sleep? I didn't even have the mood to play with my phone. I just lay there with my eyes open, thinking about him the whole time. Finally, I couldn't hold on any longer. At 4 in the morning, I opened the door of the room. Fortunately, he didn't stay in the toilet all the time. On the sofa in the living room, without turning on the light, the window on the balcony was open, so there was light coming in. He was like a dark shadow on the sofa. I walked in front of him and he slowly raised his head. Staring at me, after a while, he forced a smile. Put on some clothes, Yvonne. Don't catch a cold. His voice was almost hoarse and didn't sound like him. With a sparkle in his eyes and a bright smile on his face, he turned and looked at me. The photographer pressed the shutter, and happiness was frozen at this moment. I crouched in front of him and looked at him. He hadn't slept all night. His eyes were full of red bloodshot. He stared down at the carpet. For some reason, a pang of heartache welled up in my heart. As soon as my hand touched the back of his hand, he pulled his hand away. I felt the fleeting cold temperature and was stunned for a long time. I'm going out for a walk. He suddenly stood up and walked away so quickly without any hesitation. Sean. What time is it? Where are you going? I called after him, but the only response was the sound of the door closing. I fell back into the sofa and turned on the TV. I kept changing channels, and changing channels. Finally, on a comedy show, I threw the remote control back onto the carpet with a force. It bounced very high, and the battery cover at the back fell off. Sean has never treated me like this before. This is probably the first time he hasn't explained anything to me, the first time he has ignored me, and the first time he has been so indifferent to my feelings. He doesn't want to stay in the same space as me. I know. For what? Because of that constantly ringing phone? Because of that crying girl? I just realized that I like Sean so much. But I don't even know who he used to like. Later, I still dozed off in a daze for a while. During that time, my mind was full of Sean who ran away from home last night. Either I dreamed that he brought a girl home, or I dreamed that he said to me, Yvonne, let's get a divorce. It wasn't until the sound of the door opening woke me up. I had thought many times about what I should say to him when he came back. I thought I would say to him sarcastically, "Oh, you're willing to come back." But in the end, I just glanced at him and stood up and walked towards the bedroom. I feel that I am a bit tired. He followed me all the time. When we reached the bedroom, he pressed me against the door panel. Yvonne, I'm sorry. It's my fault. His voice is naturally lazy. When coaxing people, it will have a flattering tone. I slowly pried off his hand that was around my waist. There's nothing wrong. People all need a little personal space. You're angry. His words are not a question but an affirmative sentence. So what? I will never leave without a word again. Don't be angry, okay? I lowered my head. The bedroom was not lit, and it seemed that it was just dawn, and the sky was not yet bright. I took a light breath. I'm not angry because you left without a word. I'm just afraid that if you leave without a word, I will never find you again. I'm just afraid that at that moment, if you leave, you won't come back. I am probably a person with a very sensitive heart. So when I talk, I will cry, and in the end, I can't even speak clearly. Intermittently, he was a bit flustered and wiped the teardrops hanging on my face with his sleeve. He held me in his arms. Yvonne, don't cry, okay? You can ask me to do anything. Don't cry. When you cry, I feel bad. Do you know? Sean came back from outside and brought me breakfast by the way. It was all my favorites. As always, he remembered all my preferences. I stirred the shredded dried tofu with chopsticks and looked up at him several times while pursing my lips. He reached out and tucked my hair that was almost falling into the soup behind my ear. What do you want to ask? Sean, last night, someone kept calling you. I answered it. Although we are partners, it doesn't mean that we don't have any personal privacy at all. Usually, when we get along, we don't look through each other's phones. So when I said this to him, I was a bit lacking in confidence. As if he wasn't surprised, he casually uttered an. Who is she to you? Your ex-girlfriend, right? I looked up at him. He lowered his eyes. I don't understand why he doesn't want to look at me at this time. Yes. Did she come to see you yesterday? Sean and I always have a tacit understanding. So when he acts like this, I probably have a feeling. That woman is very special to him, not just ordinarily special. Suddenly, I had an evil thought of maliciously poking at people's sore spots. Since he is like this, I just have to ask him. Why did you break up? He looked up at me, a bit helpless. She is in poor health. My parents don't recognize her. So, you two are a pair of lovers separated by others? As I said this, I laughed first. But for some reason, a wave of bitterness welled up in my heart. Yvonne. Don't laugh like that. For a moment, there was a look of loss in his eyes and brows. He reached out and gently stroked my head twice. You are my wife. The only person I think of first can only be you. I once thought that vows of eternal love are the most useless things in the world. But later I realized that when you meet someone you like, all you want is just a thought. It's just that you want an ethereal promise that can calm that restless heart and make it not so uneasy anymore. I have a premonition that the matter about Sean's ex-girlfriend won't be so easily settled. Sure enough, during lunch break, I received a friend request. The verification message was, "Hello, I am Sean's ex. Can we talk? What's there to talk about?" I immediately took a screenshot and sent it to Sean. As always, he replied instantly. Why aren't you taking a nap? This person is dodging the issue again. Your ex added me as a friend. Don't pay attention to her. I didn't send any more messages to Sean, but still accepted his ex's friend request. Before long, that woman sent me a message. Can you divorce Sean? I've never seen an ex who asks the current partner to divorce right off the bat in my life. While being greatly astonished, I still conveniently shared the screenshot with Sean. He replied with 3 dots. And, be good. Delete her and take a nap, okay? That's definitely not going to happen. Why do you think I would divorce Sean just because of one of your words? I continued to send messages to his ex. Because he likes me, not you. I was extremely irritated by the condescending tone in those words. But damn it, Sean's reaction last night made me think it's really possible. Towards the end of the afternoon when I was about to get off work, Sean sent me a text message saying that he had to work overtime today and asked me to go home first. This really hit a nerve. Come pick me up. I called him. There are problems in several departments today. I have to hold a meeting to deal with them. Can you go back first, okay, wife? I promised to be home before 7:30. I could indeed hear noisy sounds from the receiver. He probably took the time to answer my call. There were people calling his name in the background. But I was still aggrieved and uneasy. You're probably on a date with your ex. Bye. I hung up his call abruptly. If you don't want to pick me up, then don't. I snorted angrily. Since he didn't come to pick me up, I didn't want to go home either. Just then, my colleagues were planning a get-together. I simply went with them to a barbecue stall. In a noisy group of people, I was squeezed in a corner, feeling hopeless. From time to time, I opened my phone, but there was nothing. In the past, if I hung up his call directly, he would always call back to coax me. But today, he didn't. Never. I felt someone standing in front of me. Covering my dizzy head, I tried to figure out who this person was, but I couldn't raise my head no matter what. Fortunately, he squatted down in front of me. I narrowed my eyes, trying to focus on his pitch-black eyes, until he stretched out a finger to prop up my forehead. How much alcohol did you drink? Then he also picked up an empty bottle on the table and looked at it. Budweiser. Didn't you say you hate drinking Budweiser the most? And you drank so much. Probably planning to ask for leave tomorrow, right? He pulled me up and held me in his arms. I suddenly grabbed his collar and smelled. There was no woman's perfume smell. Why did you come? To find you. He answered calmly and naturally. I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask him, but I didn't know how to ask. For example, why didn't you call to coax me first? Even if I was drunk, I still thought this question was extremely sentimental. So I simply broke free from his arms. He then held my hand in a different way. Fingers interlocked. Did you drive here, Sean? Yeah. I feel a bit carsick. Is this a new problem that popped up today? I've always been dizzy after drinking. Well, I felt lightheaded. Later, I found out that I was really being carried by him. Sean. The feeling of weightlessness made me hug his neck. His hand was on my waist. Feeling carsick. Carrying you and walking back should be okay, right? Hey, Sean. Say something. What do you want to hear? The story between you and your ex. He probably knew I would bring this up long ago. There was no surprise. Besides what I've told you, there's nothing much to say. If both me and her fall into the water, who will you save first? Save you. Save me first? Only save you. I won't save her. Okay? The wind at night was a bit cold. I shrank. I didn't like the smell of alcohol on me, but Sean smelled good. Give me your coat. Cold? Yeah. I was put down. He squatted in front of me and zipped up his somewhat loose coat for me all the way to the top. I looked down at him. There were some fine beads of sweat on his forehead. Let me carry you on my back? He walked in front of me and was about to squat down. I grabbed his hand. No need. I can walk by myself. Oh, so you're feeling sorry for your husband? There was a hint of teasing in his tone. I blushed at his words and walked forward quickly. He chased after me from behind and reached out to ruffle my hair twice. Recently, the rumors in the corridor have all reached my ears. It seems that all the neighbors are saying that I am actually a mistress. There must be a cause for such rumors. I don't know if this is the work of that ex-girlfriend. When I came home from buying groceries on Saturday, I was inexplicably bumped by a child. My mom said that you are a seductive fox. The child made a face at me and ran away. I went upstairs with a speechless and inexplicable mood and saw a woman standing in front of my house. That was the first time I took a good look at what Cindy really looked like. Sean's ex-girlfriend is even more beautiful than I imagined. That kind of delicate and sickly beauty makes people feel that she will break if touched. She really seems to have the capital to think that she can win Sean back. Move aside. I glanced at her and raised my hand to prepare to unlock the fingerprint lock. I don't want to have an argument with you. So, Miss Yvonne, can you give Sean to me? Her tone was the same as on the phone, weak and arrogant. I sighed. I've already told you, it's impossible. His white moonlight is me. He loves me so much that he can't live without me. What do you have? Do you think you can take him away from me? She was a little emotional and her eyes gradually reddened. Sorry, I have a marriage certificate with him. I didn't mean to poke at her sore spot, but obviously this sentence was a heavy blow to her. She trembled. Then she became a little hysterical. Why? I have nothing left. Why do you still take Sean away from me? He is mine. He is mine, she kept muttering. I was a little annoyed. Just as I was about to tell her not to make a scene in front of my house, the door was opened. Who knew that suddenly she fell backward on her own? Ah. You pushed me. Then she sobbed pitifully. She fell quite hard. I was about to help her up and ask if she needed me to help her make an appointment with a doctor in the neurology department of the hospital when I caught a glimpse of the corner of a white shirt. Sean didn't know when he was standing behind us. He also helped me carry the groceries in my hand. Oh no. It's the 21st century. This woman is still playing this trick. She looked pitiful, but her peripheral vision was always fixed on Sean. Sean just lowered his head and rummaged through the groceries in my hand. What's for dinner tonight? He completely ignored her. The woman stared at us in disbelief. Sean put his arm around my waist and pushed me into the room. Wait. Sean. The woman suddenly got up and grabbed Sean's wrist. Are you really not going to want me anymore? Her eyes were still red, and her red lips couldn't stop trembling. She didn't even want to pretend anymore. She was taking a desperate gamble. Didn't you say that you would never leave me? Sean, only you can save me. That was actually the first time I saw an expression of annoyance on Sean's face. Sean, who smiles at everyone and is like a little son to everyone, would lose his composure only because of a woman. He forcefully shook off the woman's hand. Cindy, can't you be more mature? There are many things you have to face on your own. I am no longer the one who can save you. And also, don't harass my wife. At the moment the door closed, I saw with my own eyes that woman slowly slide down and sit on the ground. In a state of utter dejection, she suddenly looked up at me, and there was a burning hatred in her eyes. Were you scared? The door separated everything. For a long time, I couldn't come to my senses. He pulled me into his arms. I let him hold me and stroked my hair gently. I'm sorry, Yvonne. I stared at the floor. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my nose. Sean, tell me, is the decision to marry you really the right one? He was stunned for a moment and almost crushed me into his arms. I will never let you go. Cindy still frequently harassed Sean. I know. In the end, it seemed that only after a fight did the matter calm down. Since then, Cindy hasn't appeared in our lives for a long time. I also roughly learned about their past situation from Sean's former friends. Sean's parents were not satisfied with Cindy. But Sean never thought of breaking up with her. It was she who climbed into an old boss's bed first. Since then, Sean was completely disheartened and was arranged by his family to go on a blind date with me. So you see, no wonder Cindy thinks she will. Even my encounter with Sean is all thanks to her. Sean, our unit is organizing a mountain climbing trip to Jingxian County. Relatives can be brought along. Will you go? I held a spatula and went to the living room. Sean was leaning on the sofa and working. Go ahead, wife. He grinned and reached out to pinch my cheek. Many days have passed since then. Sean is trying hard to make me forget those unpleasant things. I know. And I also gradually think that things are developing in a good direction. On the one hand, it is because there is no interference that forces its way between us. On the other hand, it is me myself. I have good news to tell Sean. In the evening, Sean was packing our luggage. I dawdled to the door of the room. Sean. I waved at him. He raised his eyebrows and walked up to me. He was quite tall and cunningly pushed me against the door. I originally had something to tell you. I coughed. But now. It depends on your performance. Okay. It depends on my performance. He touched my head and asked me if there was anything else I needed to bring. There was another reason for taking Sean out, which was that he would help me pack. I must admit this. What he packs neatly is always better than what I stuff in randomly. As it was an activity organized by the unit, in fact, many families came. There were also those with children. Sally, who sits next to me at work, has a child who just started kindergarten. Wearing a small fisherman's hat, the child looks extremely cute. Did you like children so much before? I teased Ryan with snacks. Sean gathered my long hair behind me. I have always liked them. What about you? Do you like children? I turned around and looked at him. I like them. Especially. He leaned close to me and whispered in my ear. If we had a child, the journey to Jingxian County is not long. We need to wait for the bus. Although I applied sunscreen, I still feel the sun is rather intense. As soon as I raised my hand to block the sun, Sean opened an umbrella and held it over my head. He looked at me with his starry eyes, with an expression of I really understand my wife the best. Just as I was about to tease him a few words, a taxi suddenly stopped in front of us. It really stopped abruptly, like the driver almost drifted. A woman stumbled out of the car and was about to grab Sean's arm as soon as she got off. Hey, what are you doing? Who are you? There were quite a few of us here. Seeing the commotion here, people gathered around one after another. Sean, come with me. I didn't know the woman who was pulling his arm, but from Sean's expression, it was obvious that he knew her. The woman's face was very anxious, but Sean stood still. Cindy jumped off a building. My temple twitched suddenly. Whenever this name appears, nothing good happens. She was rescued now, but she needs an emergency blood transfusion. Sean, you know she has negative blood type. Now the blood bank simply can't get any. Now only you can save her, Sean. Sean's blood type is also a very rare panda blood type, also called negative blood type. I do know this. Cindy jumped off a building. Why did she jump? Was it because of Sean? For a moment, my mind was also in a mess. Sean stood there silently. No matter how hard the woman pulled, he wouldn't budge. The woman turned to look at me and suddenly knelt down in front of me. Are you Sean's wife? Hello. I am Cindy's sister. I know our Cindy has done many wrong things, but now only Sean can save her. I beg you, please? Please don't hold grudges against a petty person. Let Sean donate some blood to our Cindy. This is saving a life. The woman kept begging me on the ground. More and more people were looking this way. But I felt my mind was in a complete mess. Her crying kept stimulating my heart. She looked like she wouldn't leave today no matter what. After a long, long time, I heard Sean's voice. I'll go with you. Very low and very soft. But so unwavering. The woman suddenly stood up in front of me. Before she wiped away her tears, she grinned. From the moment Sean bent down and got into the car until he closed the door, he didn't look at me at all. I stared blankly as the taxi drove away. And suddenly I remembered the good news that I had hidden in my heart and hadn't told Sean. I am pregnant. But he doesn't know. Later, he would never have the chance to know. The bus traveled all the way into the mountains. I stared blankly at the scenery outside the window. Yvonne, do you want a cheese stick? Sally touched my shoulder. Sean left with the taxi. On this trip, I am alone. Seeing that I was depressed, Sally asked her husband and child to sit together and then sat with me. My little treasure loves these very much. Want to try one? The jelly-like cheese stick was brought to my mouth, shining brightly under the light. Thanks, Sally. I gave her a slight smile and took it. Many people saw the scene of Sean leaving me just now. I also know that Sally is being considerate of me. How old is your little treasure? 6 years old. He will go to primary school next year. When talking about children, Sally became full of energy. She kept telling me interesting stories about children. I subconsciously stroked my stomach. Our child, Sean's and mine. A very wonderful existence, a seed growing in my stomach. The landscapes of Jingxian County are extremely beautiful. As it has not been overly developed, many local customs and traditions have been preserved. We will stay here for one night on this trip and stay in a bed and breakfast in the mountains. The owner brought out several free-range chickens. During the waiting time for the meal, the children started playing noisily. Ryan, who played very well with me this afternoon, suddenly ran up to me. Sister, where is Big Brother? It took me a long time to realize that he was talking about Sean. I know he is just a child and doesn't understand anything. But still, for some reason, my heart felt empty. Big Brother doesn't want sister anymore. Why doesn't he want his sister anymore? Ryan tilted his head and looked at me. Because Big Brother has to save someone very important to him. Isn't Big Brother's important person sister? I opened my mouth, and after a long while, I couldn't say a word. Sister, here's a candy for you. But Ryan quickly forgot about this and wanted to share his candy with me. Shui, sister doesn't eat snacks before meals like you. His mother picked him up from behind and said sorry to me with a smile. I shook my head and said it was okay. There are several families on this trip. Probably because I am so alone. Everyone is quite sensitive when they see me. The phone vibrated. It was a text message from Sean. Calculating the time, he has finished donating blood. I don't know if he has rescued his white moonlight. He called me, and I hung up directly. The text message was very plain words, telling me where he put my toiletries in the suitcase. There is a full moon in the mountains, and the tree shadows are whirling on the ground. The watchdog barked twice, and the evening breeze suddenly rose from nowhere. In the afternoon, we played rafting. In fact, everyone was quite tired. After eating, we went back to our respective rooms. I was facing the empty room. I closed the door and lay down on the bed. I touched my stomach again. It's really amazing. There is a life inside. Now, can I be considered not alone but two people? I was thinking of a name for this little one in my mind. There are quite a lot of stars tonight, but this naming is too casual. I have to go back and look it up in the dictionary carefully. I actually fell asleep while choosing a name for him. When I woke up again, there was frantic knocking on the door. Yvonne. Are you there, Yvonne? Wake up quickly. There's an earthquake. There's an earthquake. I listened dazedly to Sally's shouts outside the door. My head still couldn't process what had happened. But the bed was shaking, constantly shaking. The roof always seemed like it would collapse at any moment, until the constantly falling dust sprinkled on my face. I suddenly woke up and rushed out the door. People were constantly shouting. The scene outside the window was like an apocalyptic sight never seen before. Huge chunks of mountains were directly cut down, splashing up thousands of layers of mud. Sally and her family were outside. Many people ran out one after another. The shrill cries of children were mixed in the huge commotion. I managed to stand still shakily. The ground gradually cracked open. Yvonne, come here. Sally was still thinking of reaching out her hand to me when a large stone fell in front of us. Be careful. Her husband protected her tightly. This was the last scene I saw. It's so nice that she has someone to protect her. Suddenly, there was a collapse under my feet. I fell down rapidly along with the floor before I could react. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in the soles of my feet. It turned out that I had stepped on a screw in a hurry just now. There was a feeling of weightlessness, my skin was scratched by blunt objects, and there was an almost bone-breaking pain after a sudden fall. I suddenly found that there was no one around me. I was at the bottom. There were still things constantly falling down. A large stone was pressing heavily on my leg, and I couldn't pull it out no matter what. There was such a loud noise that even my crying was so insignificant. I suddenly broke down. Is anyone there? Is anyone there? Who will save me? Who will save me? It was all dark. There was nothing. I couldn't see anything. Even the moonlight was blocked. I didn't know if it was too dark or if I couldn't see anymore. I tried to pull out my leg with my hand, but I couldn't move it no matter what. It hurts so much. It hurts so much. Someone save me, Dad, Mom. Sean. Really, it hurts so much. The pain in the abdomen was not obvious at first. Until I felt something slowly flowing out, and my brain slowly realized that thing. Strangely, what I thought at that time was that I finally didn't have to think about how to tell Sean that we have a child. Sean. Amid the sound of the stones moving, I murmured his name. Will you be happy because you have saved your white moonlight? But it seems that our child is about to be gone. I had a dream. It was raining heavily. Sean ran towards me like crazy. Such a big man knelt beside me and kept calling my name, but I was a little tired and didn't want to answer him. I heard the doctor tell him again, don't you know? Your wife is pregnant. But now it's gone. There's nothing we can do. Saving her is already a miracle. Parents, friends, and colleagues were all around me, asking me to wake up quickly. But I was really too tired, too tired. I was very hungry and in pain. Scenes from my life flashed before my eyes like a revolving lantern. I remembered the day I first met Sean. He is really a person who is easy for others to like. But, Sean, am I too willful? When I saw Sally's husband protecting her, I couldn't stop myself from thinking, if you were here, would you protect me like this too? Didn't you tell me that you would save me first? You liar. The sound of instruments ticking. Every part of my body seemed to be in agonizing pain. I blinked my eyes. The ceiling of the hospital was always so pale. Yvonne, you're awake. Great. I'll go call the doctor. The chair was pushed away suddenly as the person stood up, making a loud noise. When I came to my senses, there was no one left in the room. Mom is still as impatient as ever. The doctor in a white coat hurried over and asked me many questions about my own condition. I tilted my neck and saw my mom secretly wiping tears in the corner. It made me want to cry too. All right. This is a good thing. After being reunited after a long separation and getting out of the critical period. Alas, you mother and daughter are really. Dad stepped in to smooth things over and tried to enliven the atmosphere unskillfully. Yvonne, you really narrowly escaped death this time. Oh, I can finally rest assured. Do you know? I've been praying to Guanyin Bodhisattva these days. It's really the blessing of the Bodhisattva. Fortunately, you're fine. Alas, you can have children again in the future. It's no big deal. It's not your fault. As long as you're fine. Mom made minced meat soup for you. The doctor said you can only eat soft and mushy food first. Come, Mom will blow on it for you. After that, many people came to see me. Most of them were friends and relatives. My best friend who had grown up with me cried and hugged me as soon as she saw me and almost pressed on my unhealed ribs. Yvonne, I miss you so much. Woo-woo. I raised my hand and wiped away the tears on her cheek. We all know what that jerk Sean did. Your mom asked him why he didn't go to Jingxian with you. Who knew that he actually went to donate blood to his ex-girlfriend? In my opinion, it's just as well if his ex-girlfriend dies. Sean, that bad guy, has been driven away by us. Without your permission, we won't let him see you. Yvonne, just recuperate at ease these days. Don't get angry because of that jerk. In fact, it's just as well. I don't really want to see him. At least not now. I'm afraid that as soon as I see him, I will feel extremely wronged. I've been sleeping all these days. But at night, I can't sleep. I lay in bed and my hand subconsciously rested on my stomach again. There was a huge wound there. Mom put it simply, but I knew myself that with such a big wound, it would be very difficult for me to have a child again. Today, I counted carefully. Even if I fully recovered, there would be dozens of scars on my body. So boring. I should have known better than to go to Jingxian. I didn't have a good time there and also got into such a big disaster. Just when I was idly daydreaming, the door of the ward was gently pushed open. It was so late. I thought no one would come. But even his footsteps were so familiar to me. The person came to my bedside and skillfully tucked in the quilt that I had kicked out carefully. The air conditioner made a few noises. Probably the temperature was turned up. It wasn't until he pulled up the half-draped quilt for me that I finally couldn't help but pull it down again. Sean stood by my bedside. He was stunned for a moment. Not asleep? When did his voice become so hoarse? He and I looked at each other quietly in the darkness. Finally, he was defeated and called my name. Yvonne, In the darkness, he opened his mouth, but there was endless silence surrounding us. Sean, it's not your fault. I never thought my voice could be so steady. I thought for a long time. I was unwilling and selfish, but this is just the truth. What's your fault? You just want to save someone. No matter who that person is, you will save them, right? You don't have the ability to foresee the future. How could you know that things would turn out like this? I understand. Sean, why should I blame you? I know that my soul is split into two people, one is unwilling and resentful, the other is compassionate and kind. One is stimulating me while the other is suppressing me. I desperately pretended to be relieved until he hugged me. There was a faint smell of smoke on him. I thought he never smoked. Yvonne, it turns out that people can really hate themselves. I dream of going back and punching myself in the past. Do you know? I dream of it. I should have found out that you were pregnant earlier. You gave me so many hints. It's me. If only I had asked you earlier. If I had known you were pregnant, I would never have let you go there alone. Mine. I found that he was shaking. Something was spreading on the hospital gown. Would this person cry? His breathing was heavy. He seemed to want to hold me tighter, but he was afraid of touching me somewhere. I stared blankly at the ray of light on the ground and slowly experienced an uncontrollable sadness spreading. Let's get a divorce, Sean. I felt his breathing stop for a moment. Sean, actually, Cindy came to see me today. What a coincidence. Both she and I are in the first hospital. She broke her leg, but still insisted on coming to see me. Do you know what she said to me? She said, Thank you. Thank me for exchanging our child's life for her new life. She said she felt that her life was borrowed from our child. I clenched the bedsheet in hatred. Don't listen to her nonsense. She's gone crazy. Yes. She's crazy. I suddenly grabbed the collar of the person in front of me. He let me pull him. I clearly saw my own face in his eyes, desperate and in a mess. But I'm also crazy. You're not wrong. No one is wrong. It's the earthquake that took our child away. But what about me? What about my child? Who will save me? Who will pity me? In the darkness, what was in his eyes when he looked at me? Tenderness, indulgence, guilt, loneliness. But I didn't want him to look at me like this. As soon as I think of the intimate things you and she have done, I feel sick. Nausea is instinct. I don't blame you, but I still hate you. You listen carefully, Sean. I hate you. In the end, my head rested against his chest. My voice grew lower and lower. That's it. Any more would be too much. Sean agreed to divorce. I knew he would definitely agree. He has always indulged me. No matter what request I make, in the end, he can't help but satisfy me. On the day we registered for marriage, the weather wasn't good. Today is the same, with dark clouds gathering. After finishing the procedures, he asked me how I would go home. I said by taxi. Let me give you a ride. No need. It's not on the way, Mr. Sean. Mr. Sean. He laughed and repeated my words in a murmur. Yvonne, you've never called me Mr. Sean. What words did you say to her on the day of separation? I don't know if I can't remember clearly or if I deliberately forgot. The word goodbye in Chinese means seeing each other again. So on that day, I don't think I said it. I said bye-bye. During the annual leave, I went to Dali, Yunnan once. It's really wonderful there. A 3-night esports hotel for 300 yuan. From the window, you can see the 19 peaks of Tsongshan Mountain that never melt all year round. In the music bar that opens in the evening, a little girl selling flowers holds a large cluster of refracted roses and smiles at me. I buy a bunch and plan to take it back to the hotel to take a photo and post it on Moments. Oh, right, sister. This is for you. The little girl rummaged through the bag beside her. She actually holds multiple jobs. This letter has been forwarded to many places. Finally, it catches up with your schedule today. This is fate. Wish you good luck today. I returned to the hotel and slowly unfolded the letter. Sean's handwriting. It's as ugly as a dog's crawling. So much so that I can recognize it at a glance. I know he studied science in college and has never had any requirements in this regard. Fortunately, he writes slowly. When I read it, I can roughly understand it. Yvonne, this is the 31st letter I write to you. The previous ones have all been torn up. The handwriting is too ugly and I'm always not satisfied with what I write. Don't despise this. It's my handwriting after practicing a copybook. I've recently developed a bad habit of smoking. Probably because there's no one to restrain me anymore. And everyone around me is smoking, so I smoke a lot too. But don't worry. Before writing to you, I didn't smoke. I won't let the letter paper be tainted with the smell of smoke. I used to think that in life, there actually wouldn't be anything that I would say is very, very regretful. Later, until I met. Every night when I dream, I keep thinking how great it would have been if I had gone to the mountains with you that day. I could definitely protect you and our child. Sorry. You probably hate me saying so many ifs. You don't like men who kneel down and beg you. I know. You don't like entanglement. I know. I can't give you anything anymore. You say you hate me. What can I do? I can only accept it. Even if it's hate, it can still let me stay in your heart for a while. I often couldn't figure out how things became like this some time ago. Later, I figured it out. There are always regrets, always remorse, and always coincidences that are off by a bit in life. The last time I went drinking with friends, I got drunk and hit my head on the glass. My friend said that I kept shouting your name and asking why. So maybe I still haven't let it go. I miss you a little. Probably because I always miss the toothbrush cup you put beside me. I bought another one and put it there. When you moved out, you forgot to take the flower you planted. I spent some time still not taking good care of it. Now, it's barely surviving. I think it's ridiculous to say that I can't bear to part with you now. But I still wrote this letter. People are sometimes very contradictory things. So, be a little more tolerant of me. I miss you so much that I'm going crazy. I heard from friends that you changed to a job that requires transfers in many places, as if avoiding me. Forget it. As long as you're happy. I haven't changed my job. Recently, I got a promotion. The puff pastry shop at my doorstep closed down. I can no longer deceive myself by saying things like waiting for you to come back and buying it for you. I've written a lot. You should be annoyed with me. In the past, when there were long paragraphs of words, you were too lazy to read on. Yvonne, I still want to tell you that I love you. There is one thing. No matter when you appear in my life, I will fall in love with you. You hate me out of instinct. But my love for you is the same. The end.